What's up, comic book family? I am here today with the man, the myth, the legend, Jeremy Slater. Jeremy, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Let's jump right into it. Got to talk Moon Knight. Probably venture into other stuff because obviously we're seemingly just as big as nerds as one another. So who knows? Who knows where this will go?
Exactly.
I've always wanted to ask a Marvel writer this, and now that a Marvel writer's talking to me, when you join, obviously I've seen you've pitched the show and all this stuff. But how far along is the show exactly? Obviously, it's broken up into phases, and one little thing leads to another. Are there bullet points you had to adhere by that you had to form your pitch around? Were you able to pitch whatever, and Marvel's using that as the formal plans or the future plans? I'm just interested to see how much of Moon Knight was kind of already established by the time you actually got on board.
Very little, but we definitely had some concrete guidelines. The way pitching kind of works is, I'd been trying to get into the Marvel camp for 10 years. I think I had my first pitch with Kevin while they were still in production on the first Captain America. So it's been a long time with a bunch of projects that never actually panned out and came to fruition. But you go in there and they're like, okay, look, they're talking about doing, at the time they already had writers on like Miss Marvel and Hawkeye, but that was an example of like, here's some of the characters that are in contention right now. And out of the 3 or 4 that they mentioned, Moon Knight was the one that I sort of gravitated to. And so from that point on, they gave you kind of a folder of like, here's the basic overview of the character and everything. But also my 2 executives on the project, Grant Curtis and Nick Pepin, who they were our creative partners right from the start. Like they were in the room every day breaking story with us. They were there to sort of make sure we didn't go down the wrong path. And so I could really use them in the beginning to kind of get a sense of what is Kevin like and what is he not like about this character? What is he sort of responding to? And they said that, like, look, they didn't really have anything written in stone in terms of this is what a Moon Knight show had to be, but they're like, Kevin is always looking for what has the MCU not done before, and also what is the competition not done before, and that's always been a little bit of a Moon Knight problem is in the wrong hands, he's just a sort of Batman clone with a palette swap. And it's very easy. And Batman's got an 80-year head start on us. So it's very easy to do something that would just feel super derivative. So they gave us this and they're like, look, he loves the mental health aspect. He loves the dissociative identity disorder. And he's really drawn to the Egyptology. Like he likes the Jeff Lemire run, the idea that you could be on the bus and look out the window and see an Egyptian god standing on the street corner is like, that was something Kevin sort of identified early on of like, okay, well, that's interesting. That's unique. So that's kind of all the information I had going in. So I kind of came back with a pitch that was tailored kind of towards the stuff I love and the stuff I grew up on, which is Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's Ghostbusters. It's Amblin films. It's the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie. It's things like that. There was a lot of that DNA in the pitch of like, let's take some of the best visuals and ideas from the Jeff Lemire run, but let's sort of wed it to this big, crazy, globe-trotting Indiana Jones-esque adventure, because that's something that hasn't been done before in the MCU. There's been plenty of shows that have had sort of the street-level vigilante, beating up the purse snatchers and the drug dealers and things like that. And we could have very easily made a Moon Knight show that was much more faithful to those roots. But I don't think Kevin was interested in that. And I think he was really looking to make a Moon Knight show that felt unpredictable and wild and really took the audience on a ride. So I think that's why I probably got the job over all the people I was pitching against. Is I think our 80s tastes probably just lined up the right way.
That's awesome. What's you get the call, man. You say you're working at this for 10 years. How does one react when Kevin not only likes your pitch, but says, yeah, okay, you can write the show?
Oh, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying because look, not to get sappy or anything, but Kevin Feige is one of my heroes, man. He is up there with Spielberg in the 80s as one of the greatest producers to have ever lived. So I am one of those Marvel fans that is at every MCU movie on opening night. Like I'm one of those guys in the theater on Endgame screaming my head off. So as a super fan, when Kevin Feige walks into the room and you're sitting in like a Marvel pitch room surrounded by like, hey, there's one of the original Iron Man Mark IV helmets. And here's Thor's hammer sitting in a glass case. Like you are surrounded by not only film history, but like my childhood came to life. Like I was such a comic book nerd growing up. That was my thing. I was an Air Force brat and we would sort of jump from military base to military base. And the only stability I had in my life was every base had the same sort of 6 Marvel comics. So I knew that no matter where I was living in the world, I could always keep reading classic X-Men and Amazing Spider-Man and things like that. So to have Kevin take that thing from my childhood and turn it into the biggest cultural force, the biggest blockbuster franchise out there, it really feels like vindication, like the good guys won to some extent. So it's terrifying to be in a room with those people because look, Kevin is incredibly nice and incredibly smart. He's a great guy, but it's you don't want to look stupid in front of your heroes. You don't want to say something dumb and walk out of the room and like, oh, Jesus Christ, that guy. So yeah, it's the scariest pitch I've ever had in my life, but it worked. I must have said something right.
Absolutely. How long until you got the call? You pitched and you got a phone call a day after, weeks later?
It was weeks later. It was definitely, and it was a protracted thing where there was never one official call. It was like seems like we're moving in the right direction and seems like we're moving in the right direction. But there was a lot of chaos with making sure I could get out of other script commitments that I had at the time, so that I could actually take the job. So right up until the last second, everything was up in the air. And so by the time I found out that I actually had the job, I had kind of already been working on it for a couple of weeks and just being like, God, I hope I'm not wasting my time here. Right. But we still went out and had, my wife and I had an amazing celebratory dinner and popped some champagne. It was a pretty awesome night.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. No, that's great, man. It's always interesting. Like as a creative, I don't want this to sound crass or anything, but where do you go from here? Are you just, I mean, you've got to be super fulfilled, right? You're working, you wrote a Marvel show, right?
Look, yeah, my bucket list of like, if you put a gun to my head when I was getting in this industry and it's like, here's, name your 3 dream jobs. It would be Marvel, it would be Star Wars and specifically Spider-Man. So those have always been my sort of 3 holy grails. And, I've now checked one of those off the bucket list and, I'm coming for you next, Lucasfilm or Spider-Man or anything. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I could die happy tomorrow. I feel like those first 10 years of my career, a lot of the stuff that got made that had my name on it was either terrible and got me a lot of death threats on Twitter, or it was something like The Exorcist show, which I was incredibly proud of, but we were the lowest rated show on network TV. Like no one fucking watched us. And so it was just, so I've never had that experience in my entire career of making something that people actually watched and liked at the same time. So these last 6 weeks of being able to watch the fans on Twitter react to each twist and going to California Adventure and seeing the people that have been lined up to get a picture with Mr. Knight for the last 2 or 3 hours, they've been waiting. I'm just like, I can die happy. This is why you get into the business, because you want to give other people the same experience that, Steven Spielberg gave me when I was 13 years old watching Jurassic Park for the first time. Like you want to give people that same joy and that same sense of fun. And I feel like in some very small way, I've done that. I'm like, if this is the best it ever gets, I've already had an amazing life. No,
absolutely. Quick side note, Exorcist, phenomenal program. No, it deserved much better ratings, but go straight or something. Let's get a reboot or what have you.
We were ahead of our time.
Yeah, absolutely. You did call earlier, you called Kevin Feige your hero. So I'm pretty sure he just called the red dots, the snipers, to down. So let's just go full spoilers. Let's do whatever.
Do it.
Moon Knight started off by him fighting a jackal. Obviously, jackals are very in tune with Egyptian mythology and such. They are. reminiscent of werewolves, kind of. And Moon Knight did appear in Werewolf by Night 32. Were there discussions of ever bringing Werewolf in?
There weren't discussions of doing Werewolf by Night per se, just because they had already had some plans for him. Right. And Kevin had an idea of how he wanted to use him, which I'm still not privy to. I'm in the dark as you are. But in my pitch, one of the images that I used was a shot from, God, I don't remember. If I try to guess the comic's name off the top of my head, I'm going to get it wrong. People will yell at me, but it was a shot of Moon Knight fighting like a giant, like 12-foot tall werewolf with glowing eyes. And I was like, look, like, yes, Moon Knight is a street level vigilante guy. He can go up against the purse snatchers and the drug runners and everything, but he's also a monster hunter. And that's how he was introduced. And that's how he got his start. And I'm like, the Marvel universe needs more monsters. It needs more horror. It needs creepy shit. And so I was like, this show is really our opportunity to start dipping our toe in the dark side of the MCU. Like, we can be people's introduction to the sort of things that go bump in the night. So it was never Werewolf by Night, but you're right that the Jackals in episode 1 directly came out of me pitching. Like, I knew that first episode was going to have that scene where he's cornered in the bathroom by a monster. And it was kind of a giant wolf creature from the very beginning.
Right. Now begins the rapid fire portion of the interview, where I just list off a bunch of my favorite characters that will never appear in live action and ask you if you considered. I mean, people are clamoring for, obviously, you mentioned creepy horror and stuff. And Marvel fans got the Moon Knight finale and Doctor Strange 2 in the same week. So it's been a pretty big week for us that like the macabre and all that stuff. People like, Mahershala Ali appeared in Eternals in the closing moments. And that's beginning soon too. Were there any Blade discussions? Were there any Midnight Suns cameo discussions or Easter eggs or anything of that nature?
We're kind of told in advance, like, which characters are a little bit off limits. And I think I think at the time we were cracking Moon Knight, they were also kind of trying to crack the Blade story and try to figure out what that was. And so I think they wanted to keep them separately. We did talk about Dane Whitman a little bit, just because he works in a history museum, and it felt like, look, that could be a natural interaction. And my feeling was kind of like, look, if we have Kit Harington show up and he doesn't sort of suit up and doesn't kick ass, as a fan, I'm pissed off. Like, if I see him show up, I want to see him go full Black Knight. Just having an interaction where he walks past, he's like, "Hey, Steven," and he's like, "Hey, Professor Whitman." It felt like that would be a waste of the money that it would cost to get Kit Harington in there. And also it's just like, there's only so much you can tease those reveals before people start to get frustrated. And we were like, there's no space in those first 2 episodes to really have him suit up and really involve the Black Knight in the storyline. So we ultimately said it didn't make sense to make this connection, but it was definitely something we spent a couple days in the room talking about.
Right. One connection that we don't even have to connect imaginary dots to, they finally dropped the B word, Mr. Bushman, later in the series, right? One, two-parter. One, in your creative mind, is he still roaming about the MCU? And 2, if he is, does he still have his face? I
don't know if he still has his face. That's a good question. He's definitely still out there. And I think at some point in Moon Knight's journey, you're going to have to involve Bushman. I tried very hard to get him in there in a couple different versions of Bushman. And there were just a lot of reasons why he wasn't great as an antagonist for this first story. The main one was just that we had to start from Steven's perspective. That was something I really believed in right from the beginning, is that you're never going to make people fall in love with Mark unless they fall in love with Steven first. And we realize Mark is Steven's protector. But by doing it in that order and starting from Steven's perspective, it made it very hard to have Bushman show up, because Bushman is just a guy with a gun. And that immediately makes him way too lethal for Steven. Like, bullet in the head, Steven's gone. But we've seen Moon Knight, we've seen Mark in costume going up against guys with guns, and we've seen that it's not really a threat. So it's kind of one of those problems where Bushman was way too dangerous for Steven and not nearly dangerous enough for Mark. So the only way to remedy that would be to give Bushman superpowers to make him his own avatar. And that just felt like we didn't have the real estate to introduce that character and take him on a journey and get him to that point. It felt like we needed an on-screen villain in those first couple episodes. So we had to sort of reverse engineer Arthur Harrow.
Right. Would you say, Harrow was partially inspired? Obviously Max Bemis and Jason Burrows had that run with the Sun King and Ra. Was Harrow inspired partially by him at all? Was Ra ever in the works? I mean, we kind of see Osiris.
Not really. No, I didn't love the Sun King stuff that much. He was just never one of my favorite villains. Harrow was honestly inspired more by me trying to just say, what is a bad guy who would have an emotional connection to this character? And so the idea of making him a former avatar clicked for me, because it's like, well, now there's an emotional bond between the two of them. Now you have a villain that understands the hero in a way that no one else possibly could. So in my first version, like when I introduced Harrow, in probably the fourth or fifth version of the show, at that point, Harrow at the time was sort of modeled on Harrison Ford. My idea was like, let's have him be like let's tell a story of what happens if Indiana Jones went evil in the sort of twilight years of his life. But that was just sort of in my own head as a potential sort of model for him. And then once Oscar came on board, Oscar was like, look, I think we could get Ethan Hawke. Like, I talk to that guy all the time. And once the ball started rolling in that direction, Harrow very quickly sort of transitioned away from the sort of old Indiana Jones making some bad decisions. And I think Ethan brought him much more in the direction of the sort of religious fanatic, the cult leader, the Jim Jones style Messiah figure. So it wasn't really, it didn't really have anything to do with the Sun King. It was much more Ethan Hawke's involvement.
What's going to happen, or what's your reaction going to be if they do an Arthur Harrow comic book or introduce him to the comic lore? Right, you're all for it, I assume.
I love it. Yeah, no, I'm. Are you kidding me? Like, my house is just slowly becoming a shrine filled with everything that has the Moon Knight logo or Moon Knight character plastered on it. So the more toys I have, the more comic books, the more Funko Pops, the happier I am. Yes, like, let's get Layla in the comics. Let's get Harrow in there. Let's bring him back.
Right.
But also Jed McKay is currently doing an incredible run on the current run of Moon Knight, and I kind of want to let that guy just continue to do his thing because I'm very much enjoying it. No,
that's awesome. You bring up all the toys and stuff. I didn't mention this to you, but after this, we need to do Comicbook.com's cribs. So hopefully your webcam's mobile. But we'll get to that. No,
I can rotate my screen a little bit.
That's great. Layla, what a character! So the Scarlet Scarab was an early introduction. It was always the plan to make Layla her own superhero.
It wasn't the plan from the very beginning, because she was definitely envisioned as the MCU's sort of answer to Marion Ravenwood. From Raiders of the Lost Ark. We really wanted her to have that fun, sort of flirtatious but dangerous banter with Mark and Steven. So in the very beginning, she was sort of, no, you know what she was, because in her very first appearance, or her very first version in the script, she was actually kind of a cat burglar who was stealing a lot of these historical relics and sort of returning them to the museums where they belong. So her introduction was like, she had a bunch of scarab themed, like, little drones that she was sending into some drug lord's house in order to steal back some necklace that belonged in a museum. So yeah, I guess that was in there pretty early on, just because we knew that Layla had to be at least partially Egyptian, that our female lead, because we wanted to avoid the sort of white savior trope of, of if you have Mark, who's, blonde in a lot of the comics, and then Marlene, who's also blonde, sort of traipsing through Alexander the Great's tomb and being like, oh, we'll take this, we'll take that. We just knew it was going to open up a lot of, conversational doors about colonialism and imperialism and things that we didn't necessarily want to deal with. So right from the beginning, we knew that we wanted to make her at least partially Egyptian. And one of our executives, Nick Pepin, came back and he was like, Scarlet Scarab was technically Marvel's first Egyptian superhero or supervillain. And so once we had that little piece of connective tissue, we started really playing with the Scarab imagery and Scarab weapons and Scarab costumes and things like that.
No, that's incredible. Easter eggs throughout the show. Can we get confirmation that it was Jake Lockley who set up the date in episode 1? I mean, that's the theory, right?
I think it has to be. The date thing wasn't something that I wrote into the script. That was something that happened during production. It was an idea that came up. I think that was Mohammed's idea. He would be a better answer. But for me, Mark doesn't necessarily make sense if he's trying to protect Steven from his life. It doesn't necessarily make sense that he would also be hitting on his coworkers. So for me, that has to be Jake, but your guess is as good as mine at this point.
Right. Another Easter egg, Bleak, and you'll miss it on the phone. Mr. Jean-Paul Duchamp. What's Frenchie doing? What's he up to?
There were times where we had versions of Frenchie in the show, but the only realistic, because you look at it, Frenchie doesn't make sense for those first 2 episodes because they're all in London. They're all from Steven's perspective. And then we knew that once we were going to Egypt, we had to get them in the tomb pretty fast. And once we're in that final battle in the last 2 episodes, we're spending most of that in the Egyptian underworld. So we knew episode 3 was really the only chance we had for a Frenchie cameo. And it kind of wound up with him just being a pilot, just flying them in. And it felt like a bad use of the character. Like it wasn't a cool or memorable version of Frenchie. It was just sort of like, oh yeah, he's the pilot in the background. So we made the decision of like, when we do Frenchie, let's do him right. Let's give him an actual role and an actual character and something to do in the storyline. So I think teasing his name on the phone was our way of letting Frenchie's fans know, like, yes, he exists in this world. He definitely has some sort of business relationship, partnership with Mark. And hopefully that is something we get to explore in future stories.
Absolutely. His trinkets, the chest trinkets, Moon Knight's crescent blades. You want
random bullshit? Go.
Yeah, exactly. Bravo. By the way, speaking of the memes, you guys never seriously considered the Dracula meme.
I tried so hard. The problem is you can't say fuck on Disney Plus, and so you either have to do a really awkward bleep of like something breaks right when they say it. But it also felt like to have him sort of recreate any part of that meme, but not do the part that people like the most, which is the sort of inappropriate cursing. Yeah. It was just kind of shining a spotlight on the fact that we couldn't curse. So look, I still think there's ways to get some of those memes in there. I've also said on the record that I would love to see Moon Knight going after Dracula at some point.
Absolutely.
And maybe Blade has that area staked out, no pun intended. But look, if Moon Knight goes after Dracula, I can assure you that someone will work that meme in there somewhere.
Absolutely, no doubt. But the crescents, how do they work? Are they truly infinite? I know I'm not sure if we really got a good shot. Are there just a certain amount in his chest? Does he pull them from Khonshu? Does Khonshu gift him infinite blades, or how do the crescent?
I think it's all supernatural, just sort of magic, because the entire costume is sort of the manifestation of Khonshu's powers. So my thinking is that he probably has a way to replenish those crescents, that he doesn't have to like jog across the battlefield after everyone's unconscious and collect all of his little blades and toys. But it's also the sort of thing that you try to just gloss over as a writer, because once you have to explain that stuff, that's when you're way in the weeds.
Right. Yeah. You're on Twitter. You're active on Twitter. You know how some of us are, man. Then Doctor Strange goes and drops a 616 reference, and then we have to analyze that for the next 2 months.
Of course.
Power wise, it's pretty clear. I mean, making Moon Knight fly is a pretty big deal, right? That's never really been in the comics too much. He can fly, right? We understood that correctly?
God, again, I'm not 100% sure, because in the script, it was, he was using his cape as a sort of parasail, and Khonshu was like, I'm the god of the night skies. And the idea in the script was that Khonshu summons up this incredible sort of jet stream of air, and he catches that, and he's riding this sort of air current at 200 miles an hour towards Cairo. Clearly it was sort of visualized a slightly different way in the show. So I think it's a little bit up in the air. I don't think he can necessarily fly like Captain Marvel. But look, we've seen that when he is channeling Khonshu's power, he can do some pretty crazy stuff. And I don't necessarily know if we know what the ceiling for that power level is just yet. He may be way stronger than any of us know or suspect. That the Khonshu Wars run and Jason Aaron's Avengers, he kicks all the Avengers' ass. Moon Knight is much stronger than people have given him credit for in the past, and that's now canon. So I think it gives us a lot of leeway to level him up or down as the story dictates in the future.
Right. Let's talk. We're going to pivot a little bit. Got to ask about all sorts of stuff. I do one last Moon Knight question first. How do I say this? Is it reasonable to believe everything outside of the mental hospital happened, technically, physically happened? Does that make sense? Like, cause I mean, we talk about, Jeff and Greg Smallwood's run, and he runs outside of the hospital and it's sandy dunes covering skyscrapers and all that stuff. What is real? What's in his mind? Can you confirm? Can you deny any of that?
Well, look, I think at the moment, if Moon Knight never gets another season or another movie and never appeared in the MCU again, I think that the ending of the series works as a fun little, is it real or is it not? Is it all in his head, or did this actually happen? I think if the character shows up again, and we have, or if there's confirmation that yes, gods were spotted above the Giza pyramids, or if Scarlet Scarab shows up in another TV show, or if anything like that happens, then it sort of becomes accidental confirmation that like, yes, all this happened. So I think right now, it's very much up to the individual viewers. In my mind, of course, it all happened because I want my characters hanging out in the MCU. I want it to be real. I want it to matter. But definitively as canon, as viewed by the MCU, I don't think there's a concrete answer to that just yet. I think it's very much up to the individual viewer's interpretation.
Right. You bring up canon. Is there like some mythical Marvel tome of events and timelines and what's canon, what's not canon? Is that just something you asked the producer and the producer was like, yeah, sure, whatever? Or how's that go?
No, Marvel's really good about making sure that they don't contradict past canon, and they're always looking for what's the connective tissue? Where do these things line up? But there's not sort of a master tome in terms of what are the next stages in terms of what is coming next in the MCU. So it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of like, I knew the plot of Thor, Love and Thunder, because we were telling a story about gods and we had to make sure that we weren't contradicting, but I had no idea what was happening in Doctor Strange. I had a general idea of what was happening in Hawkeye, but I had no idea what was going on in something like What If or Miss Marvel. So you're kept in the dark, except for the stuff that you need to know that would directly influence or impact the thing you're currently working on. But I think everything else is just inside Kevin Feige's head. I think he just has a blueprint and a map of where everything's going. And he just kind of shares that information with the people who need to know when they need to know it. Right. Because yes, as a fan, I was constantly just asking my executives, being like, so who's going to be the next villain in the next Avengers movie? Yeah. And they're like, I'm not going to tell you that. You don't need to know that. We know that. You don't need to know that. So it was always just like, you're always just like trying to find out those spoilers. And it's like, so you gonna be using Namor anytime soon? And they're very good about just being tight-lipped and not letting anything slip, much to my disappointment.
Right. Everyone talks. I mean, you said Love and Thunder. Everyone theorizes Gore the God Butcher and stuff. Is there any possibility on this green Earth that any member of the Ennead shows up in Love and Thunder?
Oh God, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. If so, my guess is it's sort of a background cameo thing. But I really don't know the answer to that. That'd be cool if it did. Make me very happy. I'd love to see Taweret in there somewhere, as long as she's not someone who's getting butchered by Gore.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Will you work for Marvel ever again if Gore the God Butcher kills the hippo?
If they kill Taweret, I'm done. I am officially retired. I will not recover from that personally. I think that hippo means more to me than most of the people I know in real life. Yes.
That's awesome. You alluded to this earlier, so let's talk about it. You once upon a time, you wrote Fantastic Four. You wrote Reed Richards. You wrote Ben Grimm, Sue, Johnny. The MCU reboot's coming up. Have you lobbied Kevin at all? Have you pitched Kevin? Have you had any discussions with Kevin or anything about taking a stab at that team?
No. And my execs on Moon Knight are the same guys who are running Fantastic Four. So we had a lot of talks about it. And I was like, I'm not going to pitch you for anything because honestly, you don't need my stink on it. Like, I don't think the original Fantastic Four was my fault per se, because I have one line of dialogue in that movie. When Reed is about to do his science experiment as a kid, and he's like, "Don't blow up." I think that's the one line that held over from my script, and everything else was changed. So I don't take a lot of ownership over it, but I also know the optics of if they announce, "Hey, we're doing a Fantastic Four movie," all of Twitter goes, "Yay!" And they're like, "And the guy that wrote the last one's doing it again," and all of Twitter goes, "You idiots." So it's one of those things where it's in very good hands. Grant and Nick are amazing executives. They're going to find brilliant writers and brilliant directors, and they don't need my stink anywhere near that project. I can't wait to see it as a fan, but I just know that no one will ever accept a Jeremy Slater Fantastic Four movie for very good reason. You don't, if your Uber driver shows up and you're like, "Oh, I saw that guy drunk driving last week," you don't get in the car with him. I think there's some things that I just probably need to steer clear of for the rest of my career.
Have you seen Doctor Strange 2 yet? Were you there? Were you at the premiere?
I wasn't at the premiere, but I was opening day. I loved it. But I'm also very much an old school Sam Raimi fan. So just watching that guy unleash and watching how much fun he was having, I thought it was a blast.
For the sake of the Fantastic Four writer comments on New Reed Richards headline, what were your thoughts on Mr. Krasinski?
I think Krasinski's a really cool choice. If that's who they go with for whoever the real version of Reed gets introduced, I think he'd be an awesome choice. We didn't get to see him do a lot of fun stuff in there. It was much more of an introduction and a sort of glorified cameo. But look, I mean, I think Reed is a character that's very easy to play as a fuddy-duddy. And to play as the least cool guy in the room. And he's always slightly distant and slightly like, there's a reason that Sue in the comics is always running off to Namor because Reed is obsessed with some gizmo that he just invented. Yeah. And the version that always struck me is like, no, Reed Richards he's Buzz Aldrin, man. He's Ponce de Leon. He is an explorer. He is an adventurer. My whole pitch for the Fantastic Four is like a giant portal opens up in Central Park, and the X-Men and the Avengers and the Justice League, they stand back and wait to see what's going to come through. And Reed Richards goes sprinting through the portal because he wants to see what's on the other side. Like, that was my pitch way back when to get the initial job of like, let's make these guys badass. Let's make them fearless and daring and cool. And so I'm hoping that some element of that will be preserved. And I think Krasinski would do a really good job of embodying that sense of he's not the sort of fuddy-duddy grandfatherly Reed Richards. He's a Reed Richards that could be brilliant and commanding and very cool. So I think he'd be a great choice. But I also, again, am just constantly trying to find out spoilers. And I'm just like, so is he your new Reed Richards? And they're just like, you'll find out. They don't let anything slip. They're too good at it. You,
man, you said Portal, and I thought our minds were synced. You can't see it, but down here is Fantastic Four, I think Annual 6, First to Nihilus. It's the one comic I pick up no matter when I see it. So I was hoping you'd pitch a Nihilus, but alas.
We had a Nihilus in my draft of the original Fantastic Four when they went to the negative zone for the first time. They were attacked. In the very first draft, they were attacked by Galactus, and the whole plot was about Galactus had fired his sort of cosmic radiation through the portal, and then you found out Galactus was sort of tracking that radiation back and was on his way to Earth, and that felt like too much, and they pulled back. And then in the second draft, they actually encountered a Nihilus, and he was kind of like 20-foot tall, cybernetic, almost. I pitched him as the sort of T-Rex from Jurassic Park, and the way he would be sort of hunting and attacking them. Mm-hmm. And he actually seemed like he was the one who killed Victor, and they barely got back through the portal in time. But it felt like a really fun twist or fun way to use a Nihilus that we hadn't seen before. But obviously, for one of 1,000 reasons, that was something that got changed in that movie. So, but the good news is, he hasn't been used yet. He's still out there, and he's awesome. So I have no doubt an Nihilus is showing up at some point. It's just a question of, is he Fantastic Four? Is he part of the different cosmic universe MCU stuff? I don't know.
Nova. Speaking of rumored properties, Nova, I mean, your writer's room, man, they're branching out all over Marvel. That's got to make you feel like a proud boss, right? I mean, I think Bo's on X-Men 97. Someone else is on Nova.
Yeah, I never worked with Sabir personally, who's on Nova, but I'm sure that's going to be awesome. Bo DeMaio, who's doing X-Men 97, is one of the best writers I have ever worked with in my life. He is an absolute genius. And the other day we had our writers' dinner, and he was telling me some of the things they have planned for X-Men 97. And I can't say a single thing except you guys have no idea how excited you should be for that show. It is going to be fucking awesome. That's all I can say about it. But the stuff he was saying, every episode, it was blowing my mind of what he was sort of pitching. So you guys have no idea how excited you should be for that show.
That's great. Final pivot. Mortal Kombat 2 is a movie you're writing. Mortal Kombat 1 was great. How demented are you getting with the fatalities this time around? Are you just going to the darkest place you can for them? Yes and no. Like, I feel like the gore in Mortal Kombat is awesome, and it's part of what people come for. You always have to find that balance between fun gore and gross gore, because there's times where, like, you rip someone's heart off, or the best kill in the first movie is Kung Lao's spinning hat, just sort of slicing her in half. And that's the perfect example of fun gore, because it's disgusting, but everyone laughs at the same time. Right. So you want to make sure that everyone is sort of laughing at the sort of audacity of the gore, and they're not sitting there sort of sickened by the close-ups of dripping entrails and viscera and things like that. There's a tongue-in-cheek aspect of Mortal Kombat in terms of the violence and in terms of the gore. There's a little bit of winking at the audience and saying, like, yeah, we know this is ridiculous, but it's really fun, and we're all in on the joke together. And when you find the right balance, I think that's where you get moments like that incredibly bloody first battle that opens the first movie with Hanzo sort of tearing through all the assassins, or you get the hat gag or things like that. So we're looking at how do we emulate those gore moments from the first one that were really, really successful and got huge audience reactions, and how do we give the audience even more this time around? Right. No, that's awesome. Are you able to, I mean, how flexible is the studio? Are you able to say, hey, these were I played these characters, these are my mains. Can I put them in the movie? How flexible are they with that type of stuff?
They're really flexible because, a lot of it is just who do we want to see? And a lot of it is who have the fans been really clamoring for, because, I'm sure, Mortal Kombat has an incredibly passionate and incredibly vocal fan base on social media. And there are people they really want to see in these movies and relationships they really want to see. And, part of the problem is we've got a lot of returning characters from that first movie that you already have to balance. So it's not, so like if the last movie introduced like 10 characters, we can't necessarily turn around and introduce another 10 characters, because then you're dealing with, 20 people in a movie and it becomes a sort of cameo parade. So you really have to go through and kind of cherry pick, who are your favorite, 3 or 4 favorite heroes we can add? Who are your 3 or 4 favorite villains? How do we introduce some of these great characters, but use them in a way that feels satisfying and doesn't feel like you don't want Aaron Black to just kind of walk by in the background and everyone goes like, oh yeah, that was him. Like if you're using that character, if you're using Johnny Cage or Katana or Devore or any of these characters from the games, you want to make sure that you have a story to tell and we have to figure out a way to do it in under 2 hours. And we have to figure out a way that it all makes sense to people who have only seen the first movie and are unfamiliar with the lore in the games. And we have to get as close to that lore as we can, because the fans, that's what they want to see. So it's very much a balancing act of like, there are certainly going to be people who are like, oh, my favorite character wasn't included this time around, just because they have like 50 characters at this point, and like, we can't have them all on screen. But I think out of the characters you do see, I think fans are really going to be happy with the interpretations. We're trying really hard to make them as cool and as memorable and as fun as possible.
Right. You mentioned, Johnny Cage. Do you have a story for Johnny Cage?
Maybe. Johnny Cage is one of my favorite characters. So I think there's definitely a promise with the way the first movie ends, of seeing Cole being like, okay, my next stop is to go recruit Johnny. So I think if he wasn't included in the sequel at all, it would feel very strange. It's still a little bit up in the air how much he will be included. Is one of the things we're currently working on, but yeah, I love Johnny and I would love to really do the definitive version if possible, and really, take everything that's fun and about that character, and bring that to live action.
Oh, that's awesome. Jeremy, man, that's all I had for you. Thanks so much. Moon Knight, incredible show.
Thank you.
Delightful show, amazing show, whatever adjective you want to call it. Nihilus, if that ever got to the concept art or visual development stage, I know an entertainment writer that will help you stage a leak, like what Ryan did with Deadpool. So just hit me up in the DMs and we can orchestrate that. But
I think he was probably cut before we ever got to that stage, sadly. But he was really cool in my brain.
That's all that matters. I will take a drawing on a napkin at the very least. But no, thanks for speaking with me this afternoon.
Awesome, Adam. This was really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.